Recording in progress.
Pauline, my question from earlier is related to a tech thing. When you post the agenda, it's coming up as a pages docx document, which I have to then send to my husband for him to create a PDF and send back to me because I'm not able to view that on my computer. And I'm just wondering if other people might have that problem and if you can load things as PDFs so it's more accessible. If not, I can continue doing my workaround.
Okay, I'm having an echo, Vicky. I will Vivian are you guys hearing an echo?
Yes.
Okay, hold on.
Yes.
Hush.
Oh, and I meant Vivian. I'm sorry, Pauline.
I'm sorry, did you say the agenda you wanted in a PDF form?
Yes, I've already converted it for tonight, but just in the future, if you could post them as PDFs, I think it's more accessible.
Are you talking about the meeting invite or on the website? On the website, it's a
On
PDF.
on the website.
On the website, it is a PDF.
It's
They
a
can't
dot.
post anything.
Okay, I'll double check, but it's a .x. Yeah, it says a docx on there, and when I download it, it tries to open it in Microsoft Pages, and then which I don't have, and then I have to have it exported from my husband's computer.
Okay, I'll check the website to make sure and follow up with IT, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And then can you post the slides for tonight also?
Okay, I'm just waiting to make sure everyone's here before we start, okay?
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So do we have anyone for public comment?
You want the slide deck?
Okay. Okay, so we have no public comment today.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna try to present. If we're having an echo, we may have to work on something, but Vivian apologized for the issues we're having. And Anika is gonna be running a little late. So we're gonna get going through the agenda. So we have on our screen the items that we're gonna be covering. And for some reason I can't forward them. Vivian, can we go to the next slide, please? Can you advance? Okay, so again, we need to remember that the purpose of the meeting and the fact that the superintendent and staff were relying on you to be our eyes and ears in terms of working with us in terms of actually, they're not only budget reductions, they're actually budget balancing priorities. So the other slides, we already have covered this, so we're just gonna go quickly through the next slide. Next slide. So we're gonna do member roll call because Vivian, I'm not sure you have everybody. So let's do our member roll call and then we'll go into the staff update and looking at our strategies.
Okay, so The PTA, do we have someone from the PTA here?
Yes, Rita Smith, PTA Council President.
Thank you. P&O, who do we have from P&O?
Nicole.
Vicky and Nicole.
Right.
Anyone from PAC? Lindsay?
Yeah, Lindsay's here.
DLAC? Who's present from
I'm
DLAC?
here from the Özge de Fazloglu.
Okay.
Also Kathleen Marte.
Dan Lindheim?
I'm here.
Jenny Morgan? Emily Nathan?
Jenny Morgan, I'm here, but Emily is not.
Thank you. Natasha Berry? Berry?
I'm here. Yes, hi, I'm here.
Beatrice? Beatrice Cutler? Jocelyn Foreman? Mildred?
Yes, I'm here.
Yazid?
I'm here.
Frank Hernandez?
Yeah, I'm here.
Shauna?
I'm also here.
Matt Meyer?
Matt Meyer will not be present today. Thank you.
Regina?
Here,
Lisa Billings?
I'm also here.
Stephen Collins?
Here.
Renee Molina?
Here.
Rebecca Levinson?
Here.
And then we have district staff. Ruth Steele? Kathy Fleming?
Present.
Pauline?
Here.
Enikia? Trish? Lisa?
Lisa's coming, but she's going to be a little bit late.
Samantha? Debbie Dean? Emily Mayer?
Here.
Jill?
I'm here.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Pauline.
Okay, thanks, Vivian. So we have on the screen the agenda that we're going to be going through today. We'll be sharing with you the staff update in terms of the board action and also following up from prior budget requests from phase 1 and 2. Then we're going to start looking at phase 3 proposals. And then we're going to start thinking about the other side of the budget equation. So far we've been looking at budget priorities that help us with either additional revenues or budget reductions. But what we have not looked at are the additional asks that we may have either from this year or from next year. So we have quite a packed agenda. So we're hoping we'll get to the other side of the budget equation, but we're going to be taking you through each of these steps going forward. So next slide, Vivian. So on the fiscal team, Emily and myself, oh, yes, Vicky.
Yeah, so I just had a question about the agenda. Some of the not yets, I felt like I was unsure about because I didn't know what some of the phase 3 items might be. So I would just make a friendly amendment if we could do that, but either way is fine. But that was the reason for some of the not yets.
Oh, I understand. Yes.
Okay.
So we're doing phase 3 today, but we'll be sharing the not yet. We're providing additional information, which was what we thought you needed. So we'll be doing that today as well. So Emily and myself and the fiscal team, we work together to provide the fiscal information and the fiscal impact. So it's thanks to Emily for all her help and to the team for getting us this information. Next slide. So let's look at our budget balancing solutions. So if we open the link to the $6.9 million, this is what we took to the board at the last meeting. The good news is the board actually approved all actions that we proposed. So as a reminder, it's listed on the screen. Some are one-time, some are ongoing. So we can look through this at your leisure, if you will. But we had gone through this as a group and you had voted for these proposals to move forward. Interestingly, the one that had some discussion was whether we should move from Zoom to Google Meets. And even though it did not pass when we did it in the phases, it did pass for it to go to the board in terms of being recommended, and it got accepted. So the $6.9 million, you can go back to the previous screen now, but Vivian, thanks. So good news, they did approve everything in one fell swoop. And I think that's because it came with a recommendation from SBAC and staff. So the board approved the $6.9 million. Next slide. So in terms of member requests, I know there were several items that were requested. And at this point, Jill, is that something that you can now walk us through, or you're prepared to walk us through?
Yep, and I think that Pauline, can you go forward one more slide? Because I think Inikia did one more. I just want to make sure. Okay, yeah. So if you go back to that original slide, where I think the interactive note taker is linked, although I'm seeing that formatting here is not all the same font size, which drives me a little nuts. So that interactive note taker, so we had staff provide high level summary to some of the questions. And I think that there was so you can see those responses there. And then I know that there was a follow-up email series specific to the RT Fisher contract. And so we do have a high-level overview of that information on some preceding slides, and Dr. Espinosa Castro is here and can walk us through that.
Do you want me to go through that now, Jill?
Yeah, so Pauline, if you forward, so these were some of the SBAC tasks, and then you had questions on the interactive note taker. And then that follow-up series email was specific to RT Fisher. So Pauline, if you forward one more slide, I think Matt can provide the high-level overview.
Yeah, so one of the ways that we have partnered with RT Fisher over the course of several years is in engaging in consultation and implementation of African American Success Framework services. And that kind of built out into some direct service, like a direct intervention programming from what was once STEM Steps and now Step Up Academy. We contracted with them to provide direct intervention services from summer to summer the last couple of years. And so those are actually two different groups because of the way that their organization is set up. So the Choose College Ed Foundation, 166K is for the intervention services directly provided to focal students and families. And the remaining 350K for RT Fisher Enterprises is for all the other consultation and related services along the implementation of the African American Success Framework. We have included in those notes the proposals, which is what breaks down the costs to specific services items that are tracked and submitted monthly in their invoicing, which I think will help answer a lot of the questions that we had about specifically what's involved with those, or where do those numbers come from. Some of the things
you go to the next slide, I think there's a high-level overview of some of those actions aligned with the African American Success Framework. Yeah.
Right, so here's a sample of some of those activities. All of them are tied to the African American Success Framework plan. So they note the strategic actions there, and where some of those services live. And we're currently in year 2 of implementation. We've been contracting with RT Fisher before that because they were involved in helping us to create and develop the African American Success Framework in response to the Black Lives Matter resolution. But last year was their first full year of implementing services. This is year 2. And then as we move into year 3, part of our conversation with them as we see their proposal will be to what extent are some of these services either ending because the need for it is ending, or are transitioning into either district services or district internal costs or resources that are going to be providing those services. For example, the transition of the direct service for STEM steps, that 166K contract that we had for this year, that won't continue into next year. We're working with them. We have been transitioning this summer into having our own summer school staffing and expanded learning programs include African American success specific programming for our elementary and our high school students, or at least a cohort of them that would be just built into that program. However, RT Fisher has been, as part of their contract, are helping us to develop some specialized curriculum that will be used in those classes, and then training our staff that we hire to implement that curriculum going into the summer. And so instead of providing the direct services next year, that will be part of that's an example of how we're transitioning into the we do as a school district phase of the service or implementation.
So can I ask a quick question? Because I think it makes a lot of sense to try to transition things to staff. And I guess my wondering is about young, gifted, and Black in the same context, right? So I think the intent of that program was to develop something robust that would be at different school sites and allow more students to get involved and bring those teachers along, which of course would fit with the goals, right? And so my wondering is, it feels like that never happened, right? So it's at a different location. The handoff piece didn't happen, and I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying it didn't happen clearly. And I want to understand how we are putting in some kind of accountability or check and balance around that piece, right? Because I love things like, you know, programs that are being really carefully thought about for affinity groups. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm worried because we've seen this happen before. How do we know we're going to get from point A to point Z as part of the contract? And maybe you all figured that out, but I just know that example from, you know, knowing that program is at East Bay School for Boys, and just trying to figure out how do we prevent that from moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think we have been mapping out for each of the strategic actions kind of where we're at in the process, what the steps are, and to what extent we're either already owning it or there's a transition to be made. There are some specific action steps though that were not created or at least presented in the way that it's to achieve a really explicit goal. They were written in a way that was to just contract with that group. So so the transition for that piece is to think about either how do we continue to contract with them in a way that's sustainable and maximizes impact, or how do we decide whether or not to shift those resources into something that still is in somewhat alignment of the goals, and the kind of at least the belief behind that piece. So the specifics of Young, Gifted, and Black was written to contract with, the action is to contract with Edutainment for Equity to provide Young, Gifted, and Black. And we're at a point now where we're trying to decide whether or not that is a sustainable effort, whether we can maximize the impact if we do continue that work, or whether we transition that into other pieces, because there are other action steps and activities that include affinity-based learning focus, which has been expanded at the middle school level. Programs like Black Girls United are continuing to be supported as an example of that. Support for our high school and middle secondary student groups, our Black History Oratorical Fest. These are things that are in some ways aligned with similar goals, but not the exact piece. The reason that that specific program is unable to expand to all sites is because the company capacity doesn't allow them to have a large enough staff to be at all the places. Again, that's part of the conversation, is if we want that specific service, because it is a really specific and unique experience and opportunity, we would have to think about what that training would look like to expand the number of people that can provide that kind of service or access to that service. Or are there similar programs or similar resources or services we can provide that might be more sustainable internally?
Yeah, I think that's the piece that I was really trying to get at, is how do we bring this back in-house and train our peoples to be able to provide those services? And how do we, if we are using somebody to help the staff along, like to learn whatever those skills are that you need to learn to be able to move forward with something that's similar, if not the same? I guess that's the piece that I'm grappling with. And Vicky, I see your hand and I'm going to stop talking.
I think you're on mute, Vicky.
Thank you, sorry. So like on this slide, it says 9th grade transition communication and it has staff 7. Does that represent Joe Smith? His label is staff number 7, or does that mean there are 7 staff who worked on that?
Yeah, that's their approximation of in their group of how many staff they would assign to each project or activity.
And so they're assigning 7 staff members to do that communication.
I think that there are 7 staff members that are assigned to the entire transition fair kind of set of activities, which includes communication and actually preparing the fair. And
okay, because it doesn't say fair, it just says communication.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think I'm just reading down the list. I think
Okay.
there's several that are tied to that. I'm just trying to explain how they've put this together.
Right. Okay. I'm just confirming that that's the
Yeah.
number of people. Okay. And then what is the number on activity? What does that number represent?
I'm gonna have to pull it up myself. Let me come back to that, okay?
Okay. And then my last question is I don't see that there's any mention of the other 350,000. This is just the 166. So the of the 350,000, it says that we've spent 200 to date. Is that 350K the cost for the 3-year contract or each year?
That's the cost for this specific school year.
Okay, so that's
hasn't
just
been-
for this year.
Yeah, it hasn't been the same every single year, and nor would I anticipate next year it would be the same.
Okay, but we don't know what you haven't worked on that contract yet for next year?
No, they'll submit their proposal in the next month.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and sorry that I'm late. I just really wanted to quickly chime in. I'm going to ask Ms. Vivian to refresh the screen. Ms. Vivian, when you refresh the screen, you all will see that on the slide decks, this 2 decks we were just talking about, slide 13 and slide 14, all of the visuals have a link. And so this slide that we were just talking about, Vicky, slide 14, does have a link and it is attached. And you will see in that link that the screenshot that you're looking at only just shows a portion of the RT Fisher itemized items. And when you are able to open the link, you will see that there's a tab for 2324 Choose College. That's for the 166. But then there's also a tab for 2324 RTF, which speaks to that 350,000 that I believe you just asked about, Vicky. And then you'll also see a proposal for 2425 attached there as well. So again, apologies for being late, and I was able to add those links, but they didn't come up in the first thing. So if we refresh, you'll be able to see that information in more detail.
So that then it says activity hours. So that's the number of hours involved in each of the activities, Vicky.
Okay, and then, so for example, the communication, it says 4, I believe. I'm not on that screen now. So that means 4 hours per 7, each person, 7 people, or 4 hours total, and 7 people worked on it for 4 hours total. Just
Yeah,
curious.
total.
Okay, that is the total hours. Okay.
Well, so wait, I'm sorry, Vicky, ask that one more time. You're looking at this, you're looking at the
Yeah,
2024
so
tab.
for
where-
example, 9th grade transition communication for 10th grade SLC, and it says 7 staff members worked on that, and the activity is 4 hours. So does that mean each person worked 30 minutes or each person worked 4 hours?
So I'm looking at it now. There's 7 staff assigned to that, 4 hours, and then it says total activity hours are 28. So each of the folks worked 4 hours.
Okay.
You see
Okay.
that? And so it's a pretty long spreadsheet, y'all. So
Okay. Yeah. And I'm pulling it up right now. Thank you.
because in addition, I only can get so much on the screenshot, but not only does it show total hours, but then it also shows preparation hours. And then it has a combo of total hours for the activity as well as total prep hours, as well as who was served or impacted, and then some cost for materials and goods. So I just want to make sure the whole committee sees that the slide itself does not even show the spreadsheet in its entirety.
That is so helpful. Thank you.
And then Ms. Vivian, I see 2 other hands. I'm late, so I don't know what order they're in, but I think Zoom orders it. Google Chat will not, by the way. Google, whatever we're gonna use next time. So I'm guessing it's Regina and then Nicole.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if Dr. Espinoza was done with the slide, so I could start asking questions, or you want, yeah, okay. Or you want to save questions at the end of your presentation? Like, what's your process?
Good point, Regina. I came in late and just jumped all in and everything. I just heard Vicky's question and jumped in. I'm gonna fall back and Dr.
Because
Espinoza.
I'm just confused because I know Rebecca was asking about Young, Gifted, and Black, which this presentation is not about. So I'm just trying to like catch up myself too, and I've been here the whole
Let me
time.
catch up to him. I'm gonna mute myself and I'm gonna let Espinoza go back to whatever he was doing before I got in. Thank you, Regina.
So I'll just say that, Regina, I think that what we were trying to do in this section is respond to the questions that were coming in on the interactive note taker. And so particularly with our AASF work, there's a lot of intersectionality between the work that RT Fisher does with Young, Gifted, and Black, with College Bound or Step Up, because it's all part of the AASF framework. So if that
Okay, so
helps.
I'll ask, yeah, I'll go ahead and ask my question then. So thank you for that. I'm on the, so this is with the screen that's being shared is different when I'm looking at. So I'm looking at the, there was mentioned the spreadsheet being really too big for the screen. And so I'm on the 2324 RT Fisher, and when I scroll, there's no letters, so I can't say what column it is, but it's titled BUSD Community Served and or Impacted. Is that reflecting both students and families? Is that how it's now showing the number of participants? Is that going to be Yeah, is that just, I need to clarify, because usually we used to have access to like number of students it served, and now it's called that, community served and or impacted. So I guess my question is it both families and students, or is it just students?
Yep. So I believe, Regina, that it is both students and families, but let me try to confirm that in real time. If you all can go into the next question, I'll try to circle back and give you the answer if I can get it, okay?
Okay, thank you, because I'm just looking at that, and then it says like, okay, so so that's question one, and then question two, back to choose college. It has the same column title, BUSD community served and or impacted, but then at the far end, it says estimate cost per participant. So question B is estimate cost per participant, is that no longer participant, is a participant a student, or are we including families and students? So thank you.
Here's the good news. I'm just gonna, I think it's very likely that we're talking about students, even though, I mean, not counting like a student with their parent as two people, but centering it on students because I'm looking at the number of students served in the summer program, and there was 125 that were served last year, I know, or at least connected in some form or fashion to the summer program. And although, of course, their families are often implicated in a lot of this work.
Thank you. And then I'll ask my next question after Nicole. I'll give Nicole a chance.
Good news, Regina, I had the exact same question, which was a drill down on that BUSD community. Does that include BUSD staff, families, what, like, I'm really curious how many BUSD students were there. So same question. Thank you.
Again, I'm working on getting the response to the both of you and then to the larger committee, and hopefully I can get it before the meeting is over. But when I get it out, I'll just jump back in and let you all know the answer.
Regina?
Okay, so my second part, so with that, like, depending on the answer of that, so we see 23, 24, and there's been so many spreadsheets either created by members of this committee or by the district, so thank you for that. But it's just that they're different, right? They have like different like titles or how to name a student versus a community member or whatnot. And so I'm just curious, like with this new spreadsheet, I'm not sure if the district created this or RT Fisher, but I just want to know like the actuals, like how many students it actually served versus what, because I think I would just encourage if it's a year-to-year contract, if we could revise the contract based on like the actuals. If we see a pattern of attendance, then we our estimate cost should reflect the attendance versus a higher number of that attendance. So it's just something, knowing that if this contract's year to year, something we could keep in mind.
Any other questions about the RT Fisher spreadsheet? Folks are just digesting it too in real time.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if there's any surveys done to see, how the families or students involved felt about or feel about, what's they've learned or done with this. Any kind of data around how it worked for them, if it's efficacious, if it's, any of that?
Yeah, we actually have reports. So we have a report from the summer. So the 2 summers ago to last summer, that intervention report, as well as semester or annual implementation reports that include some qualitative and quantitative data. So we post those on the African American Resources page, and I can share that with you. Those are some of the things that RT Fisher has been actually putting together on our, in collaboration with us, because it's not just things that they're directly doing, but things that are happening across the district for the African American Success Framework. So I'll share that with you.
Do we do any of that surveying on our own as VUSD, or is it just coming from RT Fisher themselves?
So for that, for several of the other programs that are not RT Fisher's like programs that they're organizing, we do have for certain events as well as some of the other groups that we contract with. They have their own set of data as well, but we try to collect everything into an annual report.
Thank you.
Miss Vicky?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate a part of what Rebecca said earlier about bringing stuff in-house. Like looking at this spreadsheet for the proposal for next year, for example, there's a line item, district meeting facilitation, including board governance, district partner, AASF weekly planning, and they're saying that that's 160 hours prep and activity at $32,000, but $32,000 is like a 0.4 staff person, and a 0.4 staff person works about 850 hours over the year. So I feel like it would be way more cost effective to have an in-house person do that. In the same vein, there's communication on here. We have an entire communications department that BSEP funds a lot of that as well. But, I would much more rather support an additional staff person there than paying a contract person for the number of hours to the dollars that some of these things are costing. So I just want to state that.
I think I'm next. So unfortunately, Vicky took half of my question. Thank you, Vicky, for doing that analysis. Basically the same sentiment. But the other half of mine was that I think this is a great example of how, when we looked at all of the various programs, or not all of them, but a couple of the programs going on at Berkeley High, we found that, Rise and Bridge had, really robust reporting and a framework for participation reporting and student achievement. And it seems as though a lot of that was driven by also the fact that they have to report to the city, because the cities are co-investors in those programs with us, which is fantastic. And so I think it's an opportunity for us to learn and think about, for all of our our programs internally and also our contracted ones, that we should leverage that existing infrastructure and essentially start to use what we're already doing with the city and programs that look like they're working. So, any future contracts, even for RT Fisher next year, for whatever portion is renewed or not, since it's renewable, negotiable and renewable every year. It's not a fixed 3-year thing. So even for next year, whatever portions are renewed, I think would be really wise to have them use the same framework that we're required to use by the city of Berkeley for those programs.
Yeah, Nicole, thank you for that, because I do want to acknowledge that across a number of different areas where we get input, so from our various advisory committees, the P&O included, through the LCAP and strategic plan engagement sessions and the LCAP survey, there is a big theme coming up around program evaluation. And what we've noticed is that, like, by virtue of these grants, like some grants have very specific requirements and people are, already on that wheel of like, here's the template and we need to do that. And then we have wide variation across other programs. Even in P&O, we've iterated over that template to try to get to something that is a little more standardized. And what you all saw in SBAC was a very initial attempt to have a program overview form, because there was not an existing structure to do that. I do want to back way up, because prior to January of 2023, we did not actually have a single collection platform to collect some of these data in a way that made it easier to understand. So January 2023 was the advent of EduClimber. And for all intents and purposes, this is our first full year of doing it. And we are at the beginning stages of a change management process where we're learning how to use the thing, right? And making sure that we get all the data entered and then that data analysis piece. So I say all that to contextualize that as part of the strategic plan, we really are looking at calling out program evaluation in a uniform way, because it's important for us to understand the impact that these programs have. It's also important for us to have a shared understanding that correlation and causation are two different things. And we as a public school district organization are not going to get to research level analysis of these programs, which I know a lot of us would, but it would require control groups, and we would have to have a whole team of people that are studying this and triangulating qualitative and quantitative data. But we want to get to a place where we have enough data to understand improvement. Like, what is this program, project, or support telling us about what our students need? Can we replicate success if we're doing those things? And so in this context of continuous improvement, we're moving to that place, but we don't have a complete infrastructure to be able to do that yet. But we are making progress, like, to get to that place. And then the third reason I would add is because, you know, the same set of staff people are reporting to the city, and then they're going to P&O, and then they go to PEC, and they're in all of, you know, we would rather them do that one time so that they can share all of the information rather than mind mapping and, you know, template mapping into 3 different formats, which just then requires more work with a limited amount of capacity. So I just want to name that we're aiming for that place. Solid program evaluation. Thank you for the heart. And the thumbs up.
Nicole, did you have your hand up?
No, I forgot to lower it. Sorry. But thank you for that very much.
You're welcome.
Pauline, I'm not seeing any other hands up.
Yeah, so we can,
You muted yourself.
stop, so sorry. Anika, did you want to, where is Anika?
Anika is right here, ma'am.
Okay, so we can go to the next slide. That was the RT Fisher presentation. I think there were some other. Vivian, let's continue.
Sorry, I do want to say, just back on that set of questions, I think that was the big question, but there was also another question. So I just want to be transparent about what other college readiness programs. It's funny because in my reflection about this question, I was like, all that we do starting in pre-K is to get kids ready for college and career. But I get the spirit behind the question. But just in consultation with both Heidi Weber and Juan Regosa, identified some other big things just in terms of, like, counseling plays a significant role in supporting students through college and career. We also have a very robust, as you know, CTE program that sets kids on pathways with a particular focus around the STEM pathways. So there's a lot of programming that happens in big and small ways at the high school. You know, and I can't even begin to codify, like, the individual support that teachers provide to individual students that coach and move them along the way. But we just named a couple of the big ones there on the spreadsheet.
On which spreadsheet?
The interactive note taker.
Oh, thank you.
So I think we're ready to move to the next slide. So, and I'm not sure, yeah, so now we're at the point where we can move on to the next slide, Vivian. Dan had a question, and then we'll move on to, our presentation that we're gonna share. Yes, Dan?
Yeah, so can you remind me what we did about Bridge? And the reason I ask is I spent all day interviewing high school seniors yesterday for scholarships. And just one after another was counting the wonders of Bridge. And I just wanted to make sure that somehow I didn't miss that we had done something untoward in that regard.
No, Dan, for what we did was we, the homework, I think 2 meetings ago was just to review those program overview forms. So we haven't made any decisions to find reductions through these programs yet. I don't think we're at that, we haven't been at that place yet.
Okay, if we ever get to that point, then I'm more than happy to make a speech.
Thanks, Dan.
Well, and Dan, your point, sorry, I'm really bad at raising my hand, aren't I? But your point is a really good one, because I do think this is an opportunity to look at what is robustly working, right? And think about expanding that. So that's kind of how I've been holding it in my heart. It's like, I want every single one of the kids on that Bridge wait list to be off that wait list and being served. So I'm super impressed with it as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you, Dan. So on this slide, we had looked at a budget reduction of $300,000 to the cooking and gardening program. And the committee had asked for additional information. So we have Benjamin Goff, who runs this program, who's gonna walk us through his 24-25 budget proposal. And it's linked in the presentation here. So Vivian, if you can open the link, and I'll turn it over to Benjamin.
Thank you, Pauline. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you for wanting to know more about how the program is funded. It is relatively complicated, considering I've been with the district for about 24 years now. 23 of those years was as an instructional specialist at Sylvia Mendez. I've been in this position just over a year now, and I'm happy to be here and represent the program. So what you see on the first page is the summary of what I've come up with as the proposed budget for 24-25 for the garden and cooking program. The first section lists the resources that we have currently in hand, so to speak. The first one is the $300K from nutrition services. Bonnie and I are awaiting information about that any day now. The next amount is the City of Berkeley grant, called the Healthy Berkeley Grant, also often referred to as the soda tax grant. That reflects a small amount of carryover, about $20K that's projected to be unspent from this year. This is the first year of a 2-year cycle that we're in currently. We're also slated to receive $352,528.03 next year as well. The $286K represents a contract with Growing Leaders that is funds unspent from the Strong Workforce Program grant. This current year being the last year of a 2-year cycle for that grant. We unfortunately didn't secure that grant for next year, which is $500K a year. But we'll be reapplying for that grant in October for 25-26. And then we also have a donations resource, which is the $89,699.82. That's been donations that have accumulated over the years. That is a discretionary fund and rolls over from year to year. It seems like this coming school year is the rainy day where we're going to need to use those funds. The second section represents funding that is either in process, pending, or being requested. The first amount, 100K, is what I'm requesting the general fund contributes for the program for 24-25. The 17,000 below that is an amount that we've projected to underspend with our general fund contribution from this current school year. Pauline's been gracious enough to offer that we can carry that over to next year to help in the effort to continue this programming. I've been in conversation with Salida at Longfellow to contribute something for the CTE certificated position in the cooking classroom there. So that 64,027 represents a 0.6 of a 0.8 position at Longfellow. So the total program funds, including what the actual or in-hand funds, as well as the requested or pending amounts, is the next amount there. However, the total program expenses leave us with a deficit of about 61K, 6760. So if we can go through resource by resource. Go ahead, Vicky.
I thought I heard you say that the Growing Leaders contract, that this year was the last year and we don't have it for next year. So are we actually short 286,000, or do we have that money for 24-25?
So the contract is going to make that money. It's going to allow us to encumber those funds this year to be used next year, which is allowable by the Strong Workforce Program. So that 286 is unspent funds really from last year. So the majority of the school year last year, there was no program supervisor. We also had a position, an individual resign. So a large amount of what was slated for last year just plain old didn't get spent. Thank you for asking. All right, we can go to the Nutrition Services tab. So this might answer some questions that I heard came up last time in regards to how these funds could be used. I've been working with Bonnie, and per guidance, I've put this together. So the funds from Nutrition Services coming from the USDA via CDE are specifically for nutrition education. So the best way to represent that in terms of how this budget is laid out is that it would fund a portion of FTE for the majority of my staff, which would also therefore represent the amount of time roughly that they're involved in direct nutrition ed. So the garden and cooking program obviously does a lot of nutrition ed, but we're linked with all curriculum areas in connection with what happens in the classroom. So that's why you see a 0.23 FTE across the board for almost all of my staff members at sites across the district. There's also some food cost, just over 20K. Basically the difference in what I came up with for the salary and benefits and the total amount, the total ask from Nutrition Services, the difference is going to food costs. So that's food costs for both of the cooking programs at Willard and Longfellow, as well as for tastings at all of the elementary school sites, which happen during every class in all of our sites across the district. So that's Nutrition Services. Vicky, go ahead.
On this spreadsheet, Longfellow's listed twice and King is not. Is that just a typo?
Not at all. So Longfellow is listed twice because there's actually there's 4 positions in the program at Longfellow. So each line represents a particular position. I'm funding, well, one of the positions is going to be the majority of the funding for that position is going to come from the site itself. And the other position I'm choosing to fund out of a different resource just to make the numbers work. Now, King is not going to be represented in this budget anywhere because King is its own program. The Edible Schoolyard is its own nonprofit. They have their own funding, and they operate specifically and exclusively at King. Thank you for asking.
Vivian, sorry for the interruption, but can you increase that font size to 120%? It might just be me.
It's teeny.
I can't see it. Thank you. Or 150 something, but yeah,
You could even keep going, Vivian. Maybe two more. There, that's for better. All right. Thank you. So Steve, I see you.
Yeah, hey, so back on the previous slide when we were looking at your
The summary.
Yeah, the sources of income and everything.
Yeah.
It seems like every year you get less money from the quote unquote sugar tax, right?
Yeah. Yep. This year and next year, we're getting roughly 120K less each year than we did the previous 2 years. So, I mean, it's kind of a catch-22, right? It seems to be that what we're doing, our efforts are working to decrease the amount of sugar sweetened beverages that our community drinks. But therefore, it's also reducing the amount of money that we receive from that grant. So that's one of the pieces that puts us in the current situation. Aside from not securing strong workforce for next year, that's also definitely one of the factors.
Yeah, so some things still need to be figured out for the near future here, because to avoid making cuts to the program. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And also, let me just say that this plan is really a stopgap measure for next year only, right? So I've already got some other irons in the fire about securing some more stable funding and longer term funding. I'm building a new bridge with Edible Schoolyard, and in the effort to see how we might be able to collaborate in a more district-wide effort, which I think is something that's been missing for a long time. And I'm also looking into other foundations and sources of funding that might be more directly appropriate to what we do across the district than strong workforce, because strong workforce, it's great. However, it's somewhat limited in that it only funds middle and high school programming. So there's also, I should mention in regards to the summary, another grant that's still pending that I didn't even list here because my effort was to see if we could make this budget fly without depending on that grant coming through. And I'm supposed to be hearing by the end of this month, which pretty much is any day now. But that's a grant from a foundation in the Midwest called the Allen Foundation, and that's $250K. So in the event that we receive that grant, we are in much better shape than we currently are. But in the event that we don't receive it, I wanted to do whatever I could to come up with a solution to get us close to the number we need. And again, that's just a 1-year thing as well. So that would pretty much be a one-time ask also. All right, we can go on to City of Berkeley resource. So this is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated because of the structure of the nutrition services resource. It's covering a small portion of FTE across my staff. So then through the next resources, I'm attempting to cover the remaining FTE for the rest of my staff. So that's why the FTE numbers are the way they are. And you might also notice that there's dual locations for some of these positions. Based on the funding changes and the shifts that happened within the program, I would say it was about 7 or 8 years ago now, we really reduced our operating expenses as much as possible. So we're really operating in as streamlined a fashion as possible. And a number of my staff are at multiple sites, which is less than ideal, but it still maintains some programming at all the elementary schools, all the ECEs, Willard, Longfellow. We have a presence at BTA and a small presence at Berkeley High, which I'm hoping to improve and expand in the near future. So within this resource, City of Berkeley, Healthy Berkeley grant, predominantly elementary school FTE, with the exception of one of the positions at Willard that's split between Willard and BTA. And that's for the reason that the Growing Leaders contract involves that individual directly as the leader of the Growing Leaders program. So I was not able to fund that position through that contract. Rebecca?
You know, I've been thinking about other resources, other funding streams that we have as a district, and thinking about how we use this opportunity to potentially harness, you know, some of those things. So I think about the PTA, for example.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing if each PTA gave you whatever X percent to help this process, because I think it would be an easy one to sell, but I want to take the work out of it for you and not have you have to go to each one. I feel like this is an opportunity for us to do a big think, you know, with these other pockets of money, including Berkeley Development Group, right, for the high school level. So
yeah,
I don't know if you've done that before, so I'm asking it as a question, and I've been trying to think about ways in which we support you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's definitely been something that's been on the table. I believe that a portion of what's being promised from Longfellow will be coming from the PTA. The PTA at Sylvia Mendez over the years at times contributed to a portion of my FTE as well, and it's definitely been extremely helpful. It is also a bit of an equity issue. Just to put it plainly, not all PTAs can contribute an equivalent amount. If we could figure out a way where maybe all the PTAs contributed what they could based on FTE at their site, for example, and then pooled those resources to then be distributed to the program equally, that would probably be the best way to do it as far as I can tell. But it's also tricky because it's easier for PTAs to raise funds for an individual than for a whole program, right? You know, my staff, and I speak from experience, are beloved members of the communities at their sites. So I don't think it would be a difficult ask of PTAs, but I would want to be careful just in terms of how we then distributed those funds across the sites. But thank you, I appreciate that for sure. Vicky, I see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of respond to that. PTAs prior to the soda tax almost all contributed money to the gardening program. I know we have our beloved Rivka here tonight from Malcolm X, and we used to fund a big portion of her position. However, I want to comment that the point of SBAC is to make decisions that are sustainable, and counting on PTA donations is not a sustainable source of income. Our PTA already spends $150,000 on other positions within our school, which is already an unsustainable amount for us to have to raise every year to pay for other things. And so the idea is for PTAs to not be paying for staff positions. So I hear where your heart is, Rebecca, but I just want to say that's not sustainable. And while, of course, our PTA will end up raising money for Rivka if we need to, because it's that individual, but we want, as a district, to find sustainable money to pay for these programs equitably across all schools.
I completely agree, Vicky. Thank you for that. Rita?
I think I'm mostly just seconding what Vicky said. I was treasurer of PTA Council until end of January, and working with the PTA, Peralta District PTA treasurer and auditor, they don't think PTAs should be fundraising for staff positions at all. And yet here in Berkeley, you know, it's over $1 million that PTAs are fundraising for staff positions. So it's, you know, I do, the only flip side of this that I can see is that when the Prop 28 money comes through, that might change some of the current funding for PTAs. But again, like over the past several years, our PTA budget, our PTA fundraising has gone up significantly. So, you know, I'm sensitive to that too.
I totally agree. And also to Steve's point, I think there's a larger conversation about creating a more sustainable funding model for this program. And, you know, that comes down even to the Healthy Berkeley grant changing itself. All right, thank you. So back to the City of Berkeley resource, again, you can see it's predominantly salary and benefits. I hadn't even gotten to allocate the slim amounts of surplus outside of salary and benefits within each resource, but as you can see, there's just under 3K unallocated. All right, let's move on to the next resource, growing leaders. So this represents, like I said before, the unspent money from last year's strong workforce allocation, funding the remaining FTE for all my middle school positions, and one of my other instructional specialists who's based at Cragmont, but has also been helping support the food pantry, the public and community health class that happens at Berkeley High through AMPS, which is something that we're looking at continuing next year with a slightly different angle, a slightly different approach. And we're looking at contracting with AMPS to provide the funding for that. We have not only a food pantry at Berkeley High every other Wednesday, but we also have a food pantry run by Growing Leaders already at BTA. Both the folks at BTA and at Berkeley High work with Berkeley Food Network to run those pantries. Berkeley Food Network donates the majority of the produce and the prepared foods that are delivered to the community at those pantries. In conversation with Berkeley Food Network, they've decided to increase and enhance the amount of training that they provide. It's gonna improve the experience for the students involved. We also offer paid student internships for both of those pantries, and the contract that I'm working on with AMPS is going to cover not only the cost of a pantry manager, but also the cost of the hourly pay for the student interns. And that's in the works, so that's not currently included in this budget. My priority, given the budget difficulties, was to, at the very least, maintain FTE across the program. And if that means we have to operate with less resources for materials, contracts, etc., then we'll do what it takes so that we can maintain our staff at each site, because you know the people are really the strength of the program. So as you can see, again, predominantly salary and benefits with a small amount of unallocated funding, which most likely will go towards materials cost. And then we can move on to the donation resource. So one of the issues with all of our resources and with the change in funding from general fund into nutrition services is there really wasn't a place to put the supervisor position. The grants don't allow funding of admin positions. And historically, as we've gotten a general fund contribution, the supervisor position has always come from that resource. So per Bonnie's guidance, it was not going to be an okay ask within the nutrition services funding to propose that we were funding my position in its entirety, or actually in any part from that resource. So that's why you see it first come up here in the donations resource. A little over half of that total amount available, or about half, would go towards the supervisor position. actually, excuse me, yeah, half of the resource, but 30% of the position. The rest of it going to cover staff positions at elementary schools. And again, very little unallocated money outside of that, which again would go into materials. And moving on to the next tab is the requested contribution from the general fund, which in conversation with Pauline, this number is what has been proposed. That's the 100K. You also see 17K in there, which is projected carryover from this year, which again, I understand is not the norm, but given the circumstances, Pauline specified that she would be willing to allow us to carry over any unspent funds. So since I found that out, I've been doing my best to not spend any of that money if possible, to make it available for next year. And again, predominantly salary and benefits with a small amount of surplus. And then the last tab in the budget represents the proposed contribution from Longfellow for the certificated position there, or I should say 0.6 of the 0.8 position that's currently at Longfellow. And I had a conversation with Salita about it, and she feels confident that she'll be able to do that in conjunction with a small contribution from the PTA there. And also on this last sheet is the amount that we are short, which is just by way of where the numbers fit within each resource, the most efficient way to do it. I came up with this as the final amount of salary and benefits that we are unable to cover as it currently stands. So again, considering the potential of resources from the Allen Foundation grant, this might be a non-issue, but this is currently where we stand with pink slips for the whole program looming in the near future. And Pauline has been very helpful with her guidance and with her time and helping me figure out solutions to this dilemma. So I hope this sheds a little light on a very complicated budget situation. And if anybody has more questions for me now about the program in general or about the layout of this budget, I guess now would be the time for that. I see Frank.
Yeah, I'm looking at the position for I'm sorry, it's hard for me to see. Very small for the IT or the instructional specialist position at Washington. Is that position currently filled?
Yeah, all my positions are filled. And actually the FTE of that position is higher. That just represents what is unfunded after the 0.2 from the nutrition services portion.
I don't see the FTE. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So you're cutting the 0.73. Is that correct?
My plan is to not cut the 0.73. That's just to this very moment. That's the amount that we have not been able to cover.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, my question is actually on the same item. So if the the $250,000 grant doesn't come through, worst case scenario, does this 0.73 represent the whole program at John Muir in Washington, or
well, so I mean, there's also seniority issues, right, in terms of eliminating positions. This position at Washington and John Muir is not one of the least senior positions. So it just, like I said, it represents the amount based on where I could fit all the FTEs into the other resources. The only thing I've come up with, barring receiving that grant, is that I could potentially reduce FTEs by a small amount across the program. But again, everybody's already, I have one staff member who does all 3 ECEs as well as Rosa Parks. And they're at some of those ECEs a very small amount of time. And, I think one of the benefits of being out of site in a consistent way, such as I was able to do at Mendez, I was there 4 days a week. Didn't have to go to multiple sites, as I got to really build out the program, build connection with the students, with the school community. And it's a much, in other words, I would rather not reduce anybody's time at any of the sites because it's already slim. So that doesn't represent a position to eliminate. That just represents an amount of funding that we have not found if we don't get this Allen Foundation grant.
Yeah, but I guess my point was just still that even this year, worst case scenario, there could be cuts to the program. But yeah, maybe not one school losing everything. It'd be share the pain, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, as you can see, I've already eliminated all materials cost except for the food cost needed to run the cooking programs. So I've slimmed it down even more than how we're already operating. Frank?
Yeah, just a clarified question. I saw somewhere where you have, I'm not sure the number, but you have quite a few vacancies. Does that mean you will not be hiring for those vacancies, and those are not in the budget going forward?
Currently, we don't have any vacant positions. I've between talking with Lisa and the Personnel Commission, I'm pretty sure we've eliminated. There was a number of old vacancies from when we used to be called the Nutrition Network. There was a number of IT positions at multiple sites that have been filled or existed for a number of years. So as far as I know, we don't have any vacancies left. So no, and we're not planning on hiring any new positions for next year. That's for sure.
Okay, I just thought I saw probably a list of maybe 10. I'll double check on that.
Yeah, that sounds about right. If those haven't been eliminated, they should be. I think there's one IS position that I created with the intention of trading it for an IT position that's at Willard currently. I'm interested when the funding is available to eliminate the IT garden position at Willard and instate the IS garden position at Willard. But that's getting put off for the future. Vicky?
Yeah, in regards to the 100K for the general budget,
Yeah.
since the proposal's to move 300K, the idea would be that we're still moving 300K, but we're now going to increase the amount asked for like another 100K. So it would be as if the general fund had been paying 400K and 300 of it's being moved.
I guess you could say that, or I mean, the way I see it is the nutrition services resource is different than the general fund resource.
Right.
In that we're going to have to do reporting on it as well. And 2, it's a little bit more specific in terms of what we can use it for. So in a sense, it's the same amount, but it really doesn't supplant the contribution from the general fund. So I guess the way I see it is asking for 100K is more like we're asking for 200K less from the general fund.
Right, I understand that, but because we're making 9 million in cuts, then technically it's really only a 200K cut for us.
Right.
So, but I'm just confirming that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're on the same page. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Benjamin? So Ben, thanks for bringing this information. I know the committee wanted to get a full story of your funding, and they did. Very comprehensive and very well done. And
Oh, thank you.
thanks for all your efforts in terms of trying to make sure you have the funding to minimize, if not eliminate, the fact that you need to cut positions. So the other thing that I think you should mention is that you're looking forward to get this program accredited.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Thank you. You know, I think it's been missed that we have a standards-based garden curriculum that we created for ECE through 5th grade. And Pauline and I have been talking about it, and Lisa and I are in the process of looking into how we can get the garden and cooking program accredited for the near future. And we're also, another thing we're working on too is a program evaluation tool, which I feel has been sorely missing over the years. I mean, we've had to do some reporting based on grants, specifically the City of Berkeley grant. The data that we get really doesn't reflect anything academic. It's more based on health and the choices of students to eat healthier food and drink less sugar sweetened beverages as per the goals of that grant. But I feel like there's room to generate much more useful data, which has not really been a part of the program, at least as far as I have been aware in all my years in it. Thank you, Pauline, for that.
sure. Okay, so that takes us to the next slide. That was one area that, oh, Rebecca has a question. Yes, Rebecca?
You know, I realize that we've been successful with the soda tax, so less people buy it. But I'm wondering actually about expanding it, right? So what if we taxed candy or other kinds of things? So we've tackled one thing successfully, but I feel like we know we have all the data in the world that supports, you know, there are other things that kids eat that isn't good for them. And so I don't know if you thought about that, but I was just curious.
Well, that's actually a City of Berkeley program. So this is funded through the City of Berkeley and their soda tax. So this is something we could bring up with the City Council and to expand that program. And that's something that we should look into.
Yeah, and that the program as it stands now funds a variety of different efforts. We are the largest recipient of those funds. But I think that's not a bad idea. Not at all. I see Lisa's hand up.
Oh, Lisa's there. Hey, Lisa.
Hi. I just wanted to add, like, I think just to clarify, Ben, like when you were talking about program evaluation, it's actually what we were talking about is including some kind of way to gather data from the students, staff, and families. That's part that's been lacking. The program evaluation, we, kind of worked on already, and we can always make improvements on that. But what we found was lacking, and Ben, of course, add to it, is that we're looking at a way to a tool, a method, or something to implement within the cooking and gardening program so that we can provide data in regards to like the academics that Ben was speaking about and so on and so forth.
Yes, agreed. It's definitely an effort to generate more useful data in regards to the program, which I think has been missing. And then the evaluation piece is important to me also. And I would like to have more information and feedback outside of just anecdotal conversations with staff and students and parents.
Okay, any other questions or comments? So thanks, Ben, and thanks again for all your hard work on this program, and Lisa and Bonnie. So everybody's playing their part in terms of trying to. Oh, and
Pauline, I was gonna say that. I know
And
you got a
Vivian,
lot on your
and
plate.
Vivian.
And Vivian.
And Vivian.
So thanks again, Ben. And thanks for sharing this information. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so now we're ready to move to
I just have one more quick question.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry, Vicky,
Super
I
quick,
didn't see your
super
hand.
quick. Is the gardening staff part of the staff union or the teacher union?
The majority of my positions are classified, so they're BCCE. I have 2 staff members that are certificated, one at Willard and one at Longfellow, and they are part of BFT.
Okay, so now we're ready to look at phase 3. Jill, am I turning it over to you at this point, or how are we moving forward?
I think Sam has the next slides.
Yeah, Sam is up next. I just wanted to really quickly introduce this one because it is entitled Phase 3. And for both Phase 1 and Phase 2, we came to you all with budget balancing or budget reduction proposals. We showed you what we considered, and then we showed you which one we were wanting to advance. This one is different. For this set of Phase 3 considerations, we are literally just sharing with you our own exploration of things that we might consider. So these are not proposals that we're bringing to you. We will not be today asking you to vote on these. These are just kind of us being transparent with some of the things that we're thinking about as we continue to move towards the $7.1 million target. And so with that, we first have Samantha Tobias Espinosa to talk about certificated site substitutes and to give you some information about that. Again, we're not proposing at this point that we do anything about this, but again, this is potentially an area we can make some reductions or changes and or otherwise balance our budget. And then we're going to have a quick update around BSEP. And then Jill is going to come in and share with some information about our LCFF funding. So some of these will maybe become a proposal, and then some of these are just for information as we continue to think about all the various pots that we are looking at to offset the cuts to our general fund. So with that, Sam?
Oh, thank you. So we have 2 different types of certificated subs. One is our daily subs who get a daily rate, which this year is currently $252.81 a day. These are people who have a sub permit, not a teaching credential. And until July, the sub permits right now are good for 60 days. So we have people who have no credential that get that rate. They, at the end of the year, if they've worked enough, get offered a medical stipend. And then for the other piece is the people who have credentials who we hire as long-term subs at our sites. So in 2021, when we came back, and January 2022 was really the beginning of this, we had a very hard time finding subs when we came back from COVID. A lot of our subs prior to that had been retirees or people who ended up getting hired in that time period. And so we had a very small bank of subs or people that were willing to work in person. And so we created this site sub model where we hire somebody who basically be the devoted sub to that site for the school year. So for 23-24, we have 7 people that we hired who have credentials, who are on temporary contracts, meaning their contract ends at the end of this school year. And 4 who are on permanent contracts who were previously classroom teachers and moved into these site subs positions. These people are placed on the salary schedule based on their transcripts, their credits that they've earned, as well as their experience as a teacher. And so the average cost of these is about $130K. And these people also get offered medical benefits along in alignment with the BFT contract. Next slide. So some positives about site subs, because I know we don't have very many site administrators in this room that generally deal with this. So the site sub has been essential for helping us to meet legal guidelines, deadlines for special ed. They're able to cover classes so that IEPs can be held and so assessments can be done. They support with intervention to address our opportunity gaps. They allow us not to have to split classes at the elementary level, which frequently means that there's actually more learning going on and more ability to move forward in the curriculum. The site sub often knows the kids, the schedule, the teachers, the principal, all the people related to the site and the expectations. It provides an important flexibility to cover multiple teachers over a day. So if there's 2 teachers out on one day who are part-time, they can be covered by one sub easily. They help when we're covering classes when no sub picks up. It's also helpful when a teacher calls out late, like an emergency comes up and they aren't able to give us a lot of notice to be able to find a sub. These subs are there and can be in place. Next slide. So in terms of options that we're looking at, we could continue the program as is. We could limit to only bringing on those with sub permits only, which would keep us at that lower pay rate. We could not hire any subs, site subs for 24-25 school year, or we could do a mixture of above, hiring site subs, but only for sites with certain enrollment or certain percentage of unfilled jobs based on historical data. I see your hand, Rebecca. I'm going to go to one more slide and then I'll go take questions. So the cost of all this. So the cost of an hourly or daily sub is that daily rate times 180 school days. If we were to employ them for a whole school year, that would be $45,000 in salary. That does not include statutory, which would be another approximately 20% that we would need to add to that. That would be for one sub who worked every single day of the school year. Right now we have 11 FTE in temporary and permanent positions that we have contracted at a cost of about $130,000 average. For those 11 positions is about $1.3 million. So that's what it's costing us right now to maintain the staffing that we've had for this school year. Our hourly budget for certificated subs has continued to go up and has stabilized the last 2 years, but has continued to go up. I do want to bring data in the future into this conversation from pre-COVID so that we could see what the budget was then. Those of you who may remember, we did raise the rates that we paid subs during COVID. Also, we raised it to $300 a day, reduced it back down to the $252 and all of that. But we were in 21-22, we spent $500,000. And now we're spending close to 2.2 or 2.1 million a year on subs. And that includes subs for daily sick leave, maternity leave, unpaid leaves, any of those things that people are out for. Questions? I saw Rebecca first.
Thanks so much for this. My question is about lawsuits. And
Yes.
I heard about IEPs and being able to be timely relative to those. And I'm very curious about what happens if we do away with these positions relative to vulnerabilities and not being able to meet required, timelines with students, et cetera. Like, have we thought about it that way? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's hard to quantify because we get lawsuits for multiple reasons involving special ed. So and lawsuits that we get filings against us. So there's compliance issues, and then there's also like whether or not things are held on time or we're addressing the students' needs, all of that. So it varies, and so it's hard to balance that, but that is definitely a consideration for us.
Yeah, because I think that's a piece, right? So if we know that by not fulfilling this, we're going to end up paying out money to lawyers, which I much rather give the money to the students and the teachers. So thank you.
Vicki, I think you're next.
Yeah, this is really interesting to see the difference in the cost. I will just say though, the site sub at our school is invaluable. We are the largest elementary school with 28 teachers. We often have multiple teachers out, and so it's made a big difference. I would also advocate for Sylvia Mendez having a Spanish speaking site sub is extremely important. So I know this isn't a decision, but I would certainly look at some sort of mixed approach. And ask the school specifically, like maybe they can do some sort of analysis of how many days their site subs were actually filling whole classroom positions versus doing the, partial IEP versus just helping support teachers in general, before taking any of those away. And then my question is, of the contract positions, 4 of them are permanent. So does that mean they're already contracted for next year and then we couldn't actually cancel their contract for next year, or did they all get pink slips?
So the permanent people, we would blend back into classroom positions. If we don't have site subs next year, we're holding classroom positions for them. And so that once we make a decision, we will either blend them back into classroom positions or they will stay as site subs.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to back up, just add on to what you were saying, Vicki, that is, and I'm looking at Jill. If we haven't already this past Wednesday, we definitely plan to engage our site leaders around what their site subs are doing. And again, this is not a decision or even a recommendation. It is something for us to look at and consider, because even if you're looking at the budget for the hourly, the daily subs, et cetera, there might be, a reason for us to say it's actually more cost efficient to hire another district or site sub. So please do not leave this meeting thinking that we are recommending an elimination or a reduction even of site subs. But again, as we're trying to be creative and innovative and think about how we can become more efficient with our dollars, we wanted to make sure we share this with you all, and appreciate you, Vicki, for this idea of like a mixed or a hybrid model. So just wanted to say that, and we are going to come back with more information around how these subs are being used, because, if they're in the classroom, that might be one solution or one fix to address that. But if we find, actually they're covering or doing something else that maybe another position can do. So we definitely want to engage in some level of inquiry around that.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you guys looking at that. I mean, that's like an $800,000 savings, so this is exactly what we want to be looking at, but I also, yes, so I get it.
Yeah, and the positives that were on the previous slide, two slides previous, actually came from feedback directly from the principals. Those were comments typed by the principals about the reasons that they felt that having site subs were positive for their sites. We did also get some comments about some difficulties, but it was a very, very short list. And so we do want to continue to get more feedback. I also am pulling data to show how much coverage our sites are getting, which we will also have in our pocket to make in the future. Beatrice?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Vicki. I think a hybrid model might be something to explore, because I was thinking, is there still I don't know if it's a policy, but that there has to be a break in a sub's schedule after 30x days or some, there has to be a break?
So this year it's been extended to 60 days. And it was extended during COVID. So it was extended during COVID, and it's expiring at on June 30th of this year.
Yes, because
so
that's also
back to 30.
Yeah, that's also something I saw as very disruptive to the classroom, that here comes, the teacher has to take, I don't know how many days break before they can return back. But I do believe if we had a cadre of teachers, of substitutes that we know that we can depend on, that they would just be our teachers that would know that they would be floating around throughout the district in the elementary schools, in the Spanish immersion program, that might be one way to have more consistency for the children, for the benefit of the children, especially when there's so much there's turnover and there's absence and things, life happens. But also, what are other school districts doing and models that perhaps we can piggyback on, in terms of, I don't think we're the only school district with this kind of challenge.
No, not at all. And I have been looking into that. And we have had actually other districts within the last year and a half who have contacted us to copy our model. So I have been also looking around and seeing what other districts are doing.
Yeah. And so this is feedback from the principals. Do you get feedback from our substitutes?
Yes. the majority of our site subs are very happy with what they're doing and where they're at. And our daily subs still have plenty of work to pick up. We have lots of work out there for our subs.
Well, if that policy ends in terms of the 60 days, I think there should be some kind of advocacy on that end to see how we can extend it, because it's a good practice to have, if not eliminate it. I don't know why they would continue it, but it's so disruptive to the classrooms and to the school sites.
Yeah, BFT, Regina, I see on my screen. BFT and I have been talking about that and about them being advocates for continuing that because it has made a very big difference.
Thank you.
I don't see any additional hands.
Thank you, Sam. Before we go to the next slide, we've never had to do this before, you all. It's 5:49. We're scheduled to end at 6, and we have 2 more items to share with you, and one of which we really want to make sure to share because we want to definitely get your input before we take it back to the board. I don't know. I don't know if there's even bylaws. We're going to act like we're a board meeting. I'd like to make a motion that we extend this meeting by 30 minutes. If we can try to go, we'll likely finish before 6:30, but if we could extend it into 6:30, does that work for folks? I need the Go ahead, Vicky. Vicky has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Regina has to go. Regina has to go to a real board meeting. Thank you. And Regina, this is an item that you're already aware of, which is the LCFF, but we can definitely circle back with you. And we're going to get to that. Actually, if we can do this, Vicky.
So no voting? Sorry, just want to.
We're just voting to extend.
Oh, okay. I bet we're going to vote if I was to miss the last 30 minutes.
We are going to vote to we
So
will
we're gonna,
need to make a recommendation.
We're going to jump 2 slides so we can get straight to that.
Okay,
Jill. Ms. Vivian, next one more time. There we go. Oh, go back.
Back one.
Right? Go back one.
Skipped over
Right
the
there.
good news.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to.
I know. Okay.
Regina,
For Regina, we can do this for Regina so that she can at least register her vote in the chat, even if we don't get to the vote. Hi, everybody, back again. So what we're going to be sharing with you is with regard to the LCAP supplemental budget. SBAC's responsibility and purview is not on the LCAP supplemental budget. That's for PAC and for DLAC. But what is going to be under consideration is the use of the LCFF General Fund Reserve. So just an overview here, and then I'll break down what that says. We have a projected LCAP supplemental budget for dollars coming in of about $5.6 million. But our current expenses, not including the items that you see listed below, are at about $5.8 million. We used LCAP carryover, which had been accumulating over time for 2 reasons. One is we had some unfilled positions that had not been filled for a number of years, and now they're filled. And we also had what I call the 8th entitlement. So sometimes the state has surplus and we get an extra allocation, which happened, I think, the year before I got here. So we've been using the LCAP carryover to cover the cost of the items that you see listed here. The items in red came out of both the PAC and the DLAC recommendations from last year. We do have a board policy, if you look on the next slide, that stipulates that we put $1 million of LCFF funds in reserve. And that is not a requirement by any kind of law or regulation with regard to the LCFF funds, but we do have that pot of funds. And there are stipulations in the policy that say that we can look at using those funds if there's a projected year-over-year decline in the amount of funding generated by unduplicated students. And so what you see here is, slowly over time, we have had reduced supplemental budget. Starting 2021-22, that's how far I went back, with $6.2 million, and the projected budget this year of this coming year for 5.6. So on the next slide, we have managed to cover, actually, I should have had a slide in between these two because I apologize because I want to give props to P&O twice today. So yesterday at P&O, 2 things were approved, but I'm going to save that second thing for the other slide. We had some capacity in P&O to cover an additional portion of our RTI TSAs and our RJ coordinators. Those are positions that are cross-funded between LCAP and BSEP. So we were able to take that $5.8 million and reduce that down to the 5.6. And then we were really honing in on these additional expenses that we've had and trying to find alternative funding sources to cover them. The most, I think, critical of which, because it really came out in a lot of the discussions that we had last year, is this additional FTE for the ELD position. So what we're looking for SBAC to weigh in on is a recommendation for the board to approve the use of the LCFF general fund to cover the expenses for this body of work for the 24-25 school year, knowing that we're going to have to make another set of decisions next year. With that, I'll take any questions.
The first hand I see is Lindsay, and then Ms. Mildred, and then Vicky.
Hi, so my question is about the legal requirement for both designated and, sorry, my brain is fried today. So there's 2 kinds of ELD services. One is like the pullout and one is the integrated into the class day.
Designated and integrated, you got it.
All right. Anyway, see, it was right there. So with this shift in funding that you are recommending, my understanding is that for years we were not meeting our legal requirements for those services, and now finally this is the first year that we really kind of are supporting that whole system in a more complete way. And so I would hate to see us feel like that we're doing well, so we can just kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit. And I would just want to understand if this shift in funding is actually going to make us need to take the foot off the gas. If that makes any sense at all, let me know if it doesn't. Thank you.
So the shift in funding so the shift in this funding to LCFF general fund would allow us to continue that additional capacity at each of the school sites, because you're right, just some background information. Last year, the board adopted the multilingual learner master plan. As part of that work, we conducted a needs assessment. And as part of that, I think we're more formally codifying areas that we have strengths and areas where we need improvement. And one of those areas of improvement was this requirement that we provide 30 minutes of designated ELD to our identified English language learners. So we've added capacity to be able to do that. And we would continue to do that because it's a requirement. And that's what gets us to the equity part of our mission.
So you're saying that this shift in funds is actually supporting and protecting that extra 0.2 FTE and allowing us to make sure that we continue to meet our requirements.
Correct.
Thank you.
Miss Mildred.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Sorry, you guys, I'm on night duty, so I was in the main office. So there is a part that you guys were speaking of that I actually missed. And if we have time to revisit it, I would like to. And that was talking about the 11 positions, sub positions, if we can. But right now, my question is to understand the supplemental budget, the $1 million is, I know we were talking about, but isn't that also supposed to be to cover the restorative justice positions at Berkeley High as well? Possibly
Yeah,
for
so-
LCAP?
Yeah, so there's two things. The supplemental budget is covering part of the RJ positions at the high school and the middle school. We've got that part covered. And I think it's the middle school positions. There's going to be a slight uptick in the BSEP funded proportion of that by, I think it was a 0.9 total. So each school is a 0.3. Don't quote me on that because Kathy's not here, but it's a slight uptick.
I won't write it down
A
then.
slight downtick on LCAP, but the whole of the position stays the same. That was the only change. It's the shifting of the funds. So there hasn't been any reduction in the FTE.
Okay, so with that being said, and I heard that we will have to revisit it again next year because this is a one-time thing. But if when the LCAP money comes in and it's figured out, will we really have to revisit it again next year, or would that money be used to continue to fund those positions?
So here's what I will say. There's probably a couple of factors that are in place. So, you know, if all things stay the same, then we would need to be making some harder decisions about what to reduce across the LCAP with that going into next year. One noticing that Dr. Stupin has had is that through COVID, we were offering, free meals without any kind of documentation. And what we need folks to do, families to do, is complete those those forms for free and reduced price meals, even though we're still going to feed everybody, because that's what counts the number towards students who qualify for free and reduced price lunch. So we have anecdotal information about a school who was like, hey, I noticed, I think I have kids who would qualify for free and reduced price lunch. And they really put out a push to get families to fill out the form. And they increased their students who qualify for free and reduced price lunch, which then they moved into receiving Title I funding. So I think there's a push there that if we can identify additional students, then we would see that swing. We might see a swing back into an increase of our unduplicated students, if that makes sense.
I understand.
Okay. Miss Mildred still has her hand up, Miss Vicky, so I don't know if I should call.
Oh, just one more, real quickly, because I missed it again, I apologize. The 11 positions, sub positions, what is that for? Again, I'm sorry. I didn't even know who, I was in the main office, so I don't know who was speaking. I just heard.
They're certificated site subs.
Certificated site subs?
Yes.
To do what?
They cover when we have teachers out. They're consistent coverage at the school sites for when we have teachers out.
Only when there's teachers out, but not to cover any classified positions?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Miss Vicky, you're on.
So I apologize for my confusion. This whole I understand what you're saying about this, but how it fits in the grand scheme of things is what I'm confused about. So if I have it correct, we got less money than we thought we were going to get. So if we want to keep everything in the LCAP, we need to find $486,000, which we are asking either to find a place for it or for it to come out of the general fund, which would then offset the cuts that we have to make somewhere else. Is that correct?
Almost. So
okay.
We do need the 486, but what I'm saying is we have an untapped resource that we haven't used. I'm looking at Pauline because I just learned about this. So we have an LCFF general fund reserve. So it's funding that we get through that LCFF function, but the district, not because we're required to, the district has been holding some of those funds in reserve. And so we have that, and there are provisions in that board policy that say if we've got a reduction of our funding based on that unduplicated student count, which is what we're seeing over time, we could make a request to the board to utilize those funds.
Okay, and that would be similar to like the fund for the retirement that we had in reserve and using those funds, correct? It's like a similar type thing.
It's similar, but not the same, because this reserve is actually in the general fund. So when we have our set asides, like below the line, we have our ending fund balance. Then we have amounts that are designated or assigned. We set aside $1 million from our ending fund balance for the LCAP reserve. So you've seen that on all our presentations. So I think Jill is asking, and I see Beatrice's hand up. Beatrice, as a former board member, has all the information on how this works. So Beatrice, I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, Josh would be a little bit uncomfortable. I'll tell you, former board member Josh would be a little uncomfortable with this. But I do remember there being a number or an amount that we would make sure to not touch. Am I recalling correctly?
So the $1 million is the amount that was set aside in the board policy. But the board policy also says if there certain conditions are met, we can actually lobby or ask the board if we can use a part of that reserve. And I think it was, and I can't remember all the conditions.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to remember too.
I think it had to do, it didn't have to be a fiscal crisis, but it had to be like certain points had to be met. And we can share the board policy with the committee.
Yeah,
so we're all on the same page.
I would definitely say that, and that these program services that we're looking to fund are all things that would be and or are on the LCAP fund, in the LCAP plan, correct?
Yeah, they are all currently in the LCAP plan, and most of their extensions of what was originally in the LCAP plan, and then we had added. If you go back one slide, that language that is at the top of that slide, I pulled directly from the board policy. There are also provisions to ensure that the funds would not be used to satisfy the MPP amount, which it won't, right? Like, because we've already met that with the existing supplemental allocation, and that we can use it to increase or improve services for unduplicated students. But that this would be the trigger, the funds that's why I copied this section. I should have put the reference, but this is from the board policy.
So a follow-up question, the $1 million, is that an ongoing stabler amount or is that added to each year?
I have to have Pauline answer
Well,
that.
I'm sorry, what was that, Vicky? I missed that.
The $1 million, is every year $1 million added in, or it just stays at a current balance of $1 million year over year?
It's not added in, it's set aside. It's like if our ending fund balance was 3 million, $2 million of that has to be set aside or carved out for LCAP, for the supplemental program. To the extent we've used $200,000 and board approved to use it for 24-25, then the next year we'd only be setting aside 800,000. So the million is an amount, but if it's used for a program, then that amount reduces the $1 million.
And so did you just say we've already approved 200,000 of the $1 million for next year?
That's an example.
That's an
I'm just
example.
trying
Okay.
to show you.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So it is $1 million to start off with, but if it's used, it's reduced by that amount.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be, so Vicky, to your earlier point, this wouldn't be adding an additional ask to that original cut, because, you know, if we don't ask to tap into the LCFF general fund reserve, then I have to add it on to the ask. Lots of asking. All right, I saw.
I think Mildred had her hand up first and then Steve.
Sorry, I meant to lower my hand. I apologize. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, well, Jill, you just answered part of my question. So this doesn't add to our target because there's money sitting there to pay for this shortfall. But I guess if we were saying if the district decided not to do this, then you're either cutting program or adding to the target, right? So it's like this is a shortfall in this program. So we either need to do this or cut the program or find money elsewhere, right?
Correct. Yep. And it's not a long-term solution. So, you know, I think this body understands that we've got this year's reductions to make, but there's another set of reductions for next year, pending any positive news from the governor's office.
Right.
Right. Yeah, this is a one-time solution, right? So, all right.
Yep. Thank you. Vicky?
Yeah, can you go to the next slide? At Berkeley High, you have that 0.4 BHS ELD coordinator. And I know for our site funds, we just approved money that is like a 0.5 and a 0.6 for some the newcomer multilingual program. So I guess my question is if this doesn't get funded, like, does that person that was funded through BSEP, like, does the position go away, or do they just reduce their FTE based on the funding that they get?
So what I will say, particular for Berkeley High, is that they have a number of positions that, you know, some of them are site funded, some of them are BSEP funded, and some of them are LCAP funded positions. So for Berkeley High, we have an ELD allocation already of a 1.0, and then there was a split of partial funding. So this additional 0.4 that we were paying for out of that carryover funds makes that other position whole. And so anyway, so just saying that it's not those things that you all approved through that BSEP process with your school site council, those are already set. These are different positions.
Okay.
So I think, Pauline, we're looking for a recommendation from this body to make that recommendation to the board.
Right. So do we want to get like a temperature check, or do we want to get like an actual feedback, or do we want to bring it back when we're ready for them to vote on?
So we would like for the committee, those who are here to vote this evening, and then any that are missing or who have to leave, I promise to send them the video so they can get Jill's overview and get their vote as well, because we do want to, we presented it to the board, so you know, at the last board meeting as a need and a proposal, but we said we wanted to first engage you all in it. So we're planning on taking it back at our next meeting. So is that a question, Ms. Beatrice? Hi, Ms. Beatrice.
And I think that there's a timing situation
yeah, that's right.
and a public service announcement. So the board has canceled the May 8th meeting, and now there's a special meeting on May 1st, which is the next SBAC meeting. So we're in a bit of a tricky situation with timelines for notification for people. So that's why the push.
I just wanted to say, I think it was a good recommendation that we made back then in terms of helping this community to help and support. our students. So we're still, even with this 46, we're still in a good place. It's still $5 million. And it's still something that this district is committed to also every year look for to replenish at the end of every year or the beginning of every school year. So if I can make the recommendation, I would say to move forward to use these funds, these LCAP funds for this one time only.
We are very board-like today. So Ms. Beatrice has made a motion to use these reserve funds to address this shortfall. Can we get a
second? Vicky Davis.
second? Look at you, the name, and you guys are getting so official. All in favor? And again, only
Aye.
members can vote. So if you are a participant or member of our community, we're glad you're here, but we're just looking for SBAC members. Ms. Vivian, can you kind of just record the votes, and then, because I need to know who's missing that I can follow up with them.
Okay.
Okay, so we are gonna ask that you do not pull your check markings down, just so Ms. Vivian can tally. And then it is 6:15, so I'm gonna ask Jill to go back in time to share the good news. This is all good news. We're proud of
More good news.
more good news, exactly.
We're trying for good news. So good news in that we do not have to add more money to the target.
Ms. Vivian, go back 3 slides. I know you're counting tallies too, sorry.
I gave her 2 things at one time.
Two
One
more.
2 more. One
Here.
more. Back. No. Other way. Other way.
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
There, wait, orange box. Go back to the orange box.
There you go. Freeze. That's the one, Ms. Vivian.
All right. I really wanted Kathy here to share good news, but I think Miss Vicky's here, and I don't know if Nicole is here. But we had surplus carry over from BSEP in some BSEP funds, and so last night Director Albrecht presented a proposal to P&O to utilize $600,000 of those funds to cover one-time costs associated with curriculum adoption materials, inclusive of professional development. You can watch the recording and we can send you that PowerPoint, but the P&O gave us a big thumbs up on those funds. And I appreciated the P&O's appreciation for us thinking outside the box about how we can reduce the dollar amounts that we have to add to the target. So we'll be moving forward with that for next year. I wanted to see hearts and like stars. I see Steve. Steve's
reaction.
Good job. Nodding his head.
600 is a lot.
Okay. Regina's messaging me. I can't vote, but I'm gonna say, what is your vote? Yeah. Oh, she's inclusive. I said, I'm gonna tell her, don't worry, we're gonna let you vote by email.
And just to go to the slide that said the other side of the coin or something like that, we talked, let me see. And we are about to wrap. Appreciate you all for staying a little bit longer. Keep going, Ms. Vivian. Go, go, go. Keep going.
Crazy. Am I going in the right direction?
You're going the right direction. There we go. No, it's not. Yes, Miss Sarah, we're done with voting, Sarah. We're not done with the meeting. We're about to get ready to close the meeting. This next section is really just a kind of a preview, if you will. We know that we have our $7.1 million target, and we have, in collaboration with you all, made significant progress towards identifying and even getting approved strategies to get us close to that target. And the reality is that we know that we also have additional expenses. It's just how life and adulting works. Go to slide 29, please, Ms. Vivian. And so just wanted to preview for you all that even as we've gotten closer to our set target, we know that there's more coming. And so, for example, we know that we are going to do a curriculum adoption next year. And there will be cost implications with that. We also know that you all had asked us about our expenses on legal fees. I think Rebecca is gone. We'll come back to you all with some, you know, different scenarios of what it might look like for us to have in-house counsel. And so, Pauline, I know you may have some other ones to share, but I just wanted to preview for you all that, you know, get excited and be really proud of the work that we've done collaboratively towards that 7.1. But this is life, right? And life is like, it's never that simple. There's actually going to be other expenses that we need to address that will impact our target. And we'll be bringing those to you. So the target might go up. And we also are going to be coming with some solutions or some budget balancing proposals that maybe upfront looks like an expense, an additional expense, but in the long run could reduce costs. And the in-house general counsel is an example of that. We would have to pay for that staff person, perhaps, right? But in the long run, we would maybe not have to pay as much or as often call for those consultations that we know has really increased our legal expenses. Pauline, I don't know if you wanted to add something else to that.
Not at this time. I'll rather put it on a slide, because we're still looking at some of the expenses and some of the ways that we can pay for them. Some are this year costs and some are other costs that are coming up. So I think we'll have a full presentation at the next meeting.
Right. We just kind of wanted to plant a seed because, you know.
Yeah.
It's because it's
We're
important.
not done.
Not done. That's what we're saying. We're not. We've done a lot together, but we are not done. Nicole?
Awesome. So if we have suggestions about program increases or decreases also, what would be the right time for us to share those and discuss those, add them to the agenda?
Yep. Maybe we can do between now and our next meeting, Nicole, and just the rest of the team is send something out that's kind of another kind of spreadsheet. I know Regina said we have a lot of them, and we do, but we'll send another one maybe so that people can start to kind of upload different ideas like that you might have. We also know that our other advisory committees continue to meet regularly and may or may not have asked or proposals that they want us to consider too. So we'll make a document, Nicole, and send it out for folks to put it on there, and we can bring that back to the next meeting.
And at the next meeting, so let's go on, Vivian, we can go to the meetings. I think it's the same date as the special board meeting.
First, and Jill just texted me. Jill said the next meeting is
next week.
Oh God.
So SBAC was prepared. We had 2 back-to-back meetings, but we got a timeline bumped up.
Yeah, so and depending on what those new expenses, et cetera, look like and how they impact the target, if at all, we might come back and propose to you all that we have additional meetings. I think I warned you about that our very first.
Yeah, you did.
So stay tuned for that. But our official next meeting, as is posted here, is on the 1st from 4 to 6 p.m. In the interim, we are anticipating, it won't be by May 1st, right, Pauline? We're anticipating getting an update for the governor's May revise. It won't be first though, but it'll be sometime in May.
Right, it will be closer to the 15th. I think it's
I thought they said 21st.
Yeah.
And we listen, we need collective positive energy, you all, that he come back and say, just joking, some money, you all are good. At the very least, we're hoping he's not going to come back and say,
you need more.
So when we do come back on the 1st, we will come back with, again, that other side of the coin and tell you about some new expenses, that thing we kind of planted the seed about. If we have proposals, real phase 3 proposals, we'll bring that back as well. We'll also, again, bring back what you might have suggested between now and the next meeting. And then we are also going to, of course, get your input and possibly, if appropriate, get a vote and then extend to some additional calendar dates. But until then, we wish you a wonderful evening and appreciate you all and your softness. And again, want to reiterate that I hope that you are doing part of your job is to go back to your advisory groups and give them these updates so that they too know what's going on with our district budget. Have a good night, y'all.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye, everyone.
Night, Miss Mildred.
Bye-bye.
See
you soon.
See you soon, Nicole.
Bye, Nicole. Bye, Mildred.
And then Miss Vivian, when the recording is ready, just let me know because I'm gonna have to send it to the people who had to leave early, and I'm gonna find where the timestamp is for Jill's LCFF section, and then we could get their votes, but it looked like
in the morning.
perfect.
All
Thank you.
right.
Have a great evening, y'all.
Good night.
Bye, thanks, Anikia. Bye. Bye, Jill. Bye, Sam.